This podcast is brought to you by ProLongevity, the award-winning 8-week program that can transform the lives of people with prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and many other lifestyle-related illnesses. Founded by Phillips, the pharmacist who gave up drugs.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the ProLongevity podcast. And I'm delighted to have with me today Bertie Stringer. Now, Bertie Stringer is quite different from many of the guests we've had on the podcast. Most of our guests have been health professionals, people with very specific expertise in lifestyle and longevity. Bertie's got a very different background, and I'm absolutely delighted to have her with me, actually precisely because of that. So, Bertie, do please introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me, Graham. Well, yeah, I've got quite a mixed background, if I'm honest. For many, many years, more years than I would care to admit, I was actually a PR in celebrity PR, working through a lot of the TV channels like MTV. And then I've always had an absolute love and passion for nutrition. It was really sparked when I was living in Sydney in the early 2000s. My partner was diagnosed with testicular cancer when literally he just turned 30th. I actually think it was his 30th birthday. And I quickly kind of turned to naturopathy to look at ways of helping him through his treatment. I was in the best place one of the best places in the world for that, Australia. Then came back to London, started working back in PR again, and then decided to go to the College of Natural Medicine for 3 years to do a naturopathic nutrition qualification, which was absolutely amazing. I hadn't got a science background. So I did a year of biomed, and then I did nutrition for 2 years. And it was there that it kind of just reinforced everything I thought I wanted to do, and just became the kind of foundation for working in this field. And then I started to kind of combine the two. I was doing some PR for fitness brands, and then I started my own clinic. And it was there that I started seeing men. Now, we're going back about nearly 10 years ago. So this is before, Graham, the whole menopause was mainstream. But we were starting to kind of hear more about it and talk more about it. But I was seeing men with what we would consider perimenopausal symptoms: low mood, weight gain, almost depression, not kind of understanding what was going on with their bodies. When I functionally tested them all, they all turned out to have low testosterone. Then when we dug into this, because my husband was one of those people who turned out to have low testosterone, and we realized it was a global problem, with testosterone levels being the lowest they've ever been and declining rapidly over the past 50 years. And so we started creating our own line of supplements for men as they age, losing their testosterone, because unfortunately now it's happening in their 20s. So that's been amazing. We were very ahead of the curve. We were the first in andropause, which people only can kind of relate to from menopause. It actually just means, the retreat of male hormones. We launched those in Boots. And I've just been working in wellness for 10 years now. And then I started about a year ago to see the conversation, Graham, in the media, which obviously I track because I, worked in it for so long, but in the forums and on the social media, talking about GLP-1s, didn't know very much about them, went down the bunny hole and realized that this was the fastest growing pharma drug class in history. It was solving a lot of problems, but creating a whole host of new ones alongside, particularly from a holistic point of view, which obviously is of interest to me. So that's kind of created new opportunity for me to look at what I can do with my knowledge and expertise in hormonal health, weight loss, metabolic health, in working on naturopathic and holistic help for the millions of people now taking up GLP-1s. And that's how I found you, because I found you in an article I was reading about GLP-1 use, because the media is constantly talking about it. And thankfully, it sparked a kind of another conversation between you and I about this phenomenon that we're all witnessing now.
Brilliant. And yes, I'd forgotten that. I had a small piece in an article on a microdosing of GLPs in The Guardian. That's right. And you reached out. That's going to be the major conversation today. But I do want to dwell a little bit more on men's health.
Yes.
Because it's been a long-standing interest of mine. I've done lots of work in the past with Men in Sheds and Men's Health Forum. And interestingly, one of the themes I pursue a lot is statins.
Right.
And one of the side effects of statins, of course, is it destroys your testosterone levels.
Yeah. As do a lot
Almost
of
no one knows that.
Yeah.
And, we know that men in most developed countries predecease women by a couple of years at least, if not more so. None of it's inevitable. So not today's discussion, but I'd like to have you back on a future date, Bertie, and talk about men's health specifically, because I think it's a discussion, it's a conversation that never happens. Male suicide, all of this stuff, it's a huge problem that's kind of, men don't talk about it. So
It does.
really pleased that you raised it.
Yeah, it doesn't get the same amount of attention, Graham, and women's health and women's wellness has really led the conversation for a long time now. Not that it didn't need to, but what I think I always get a little bit cross about is it shouldn't be at the detriment of the other. It should never be about, we're just talking about the health of one gender. And I think women's health has come up here, and men's sadly is still not a priority. And I would love to talk another time
It's
about
certainly
it.
not a priority for men. That's the biggest problem.
No,
Okay.
true.
So we'll return to that one because it's a big theme of mine. So you've kind of worked your way into the wonderful world of GLPs. And we can get into the weeds. I'm sure we'll get into the weeds of some of this, but what's your kind of global view? So where did you start? What caught your attention? What's your current thinking on the whole area? And then let's kind of develop a conversation, because I think we've got broadly similar perspectives, albeit we've come at it from completely different opposite sort of sides of the divide, really.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that caught my attention was actually microdosing in menopause. I'm 51. I train. I have the same challenges that everybody else, every other woman of my age does. And obviously, actually, aside from our men's brands, we do have a female hormonal health menopause brand. So I'm always looking at menopause as a subject. And I was following some women on Instagram, and we're talking about America, where obviously they have been faster adopters and earlier adopters of GLP-1s. And also they have compounding pharmacies, which enable microdosing to be possible. And microdosing, we're talking about much smaller amounts of what would be clinically considered use here. I think like Mounjaro, for example, you have to start at 2.5, whereas a microdosing would be potentially a third or even a quarter of that. But I was seeing people use the microdosing for menopause and get incredible results over time. Now we're talking about with training, with weight training, with nutrition, with probably metabolic testing of their bloods, markers, tracking. So we're already into a different group of people that, would be investing a lot of time and a lot of money in this. But I found that super interesting. Then it kind of I looked at the wider use of GLP-1s. And I mean, I think also there it's quite interesting because we're probably talking about one extreme to another, Graham. We're talking about, there's some amazing clinics and doctors working on microdosing with the holistic health around them that are doing things brilliantly. And then I noticed the other side of the spectrum, which was just the world and his wife seeing for the first time that weight loss was guaranteed, and they would going out of, absolutely out of their way, do anything to get their hands on GLP-1s. And in the UK, we have far less barriers to use than we do or we're seeing in America. In America, it's very expensive, is gate kept.
Literally 10 times the price, so that people know. There's been this big uproar, understandably, about the manufacturer, Eli Lilly, increasing the price of Mounjaro by 50% or whatever it was.
Yeah.
What people need to understand is the US price is 10 times the UK price, just to give perspective.
Yeah, well, looking at I think it's around $1,200 a month. It's a lot harder to get. A lot of that is either insurance-led or, private prescriptions. So we're already kind of narrowing who is going to be able to use that drug. And it's much more controlled in terms of the reasons that they came onto the market, as you know better than anyone, is for obesity and metabolic disease. In the UK, we are now seeing the uptake of these drugs predominantly in the past year for weight loss. We've gone from the latest stats that I saw that were recent, said last year there were 500,000 prescriptions for GLP-1s in the UK. By June, end of June, that was 1.5 million. So 41,000 scripts per week are being written, and predominantly they are being led by the private online clinics, and predominantly for weight loss, which is creating a new wealth of issues in people not understanding the drug, not prepping for the drug, and just everything in between, basically creating a new host of health issues and concerns around who's using them and why they're using them.
I mean, since we last spoke, actually, I'd already done a deep dive on the GLPs, on the incretin mimetics, because I chaired sessions at 2 international conferences on this. So I thought I'd better know what I'm dealing with, because I had some of the world's leading experts with me, one in the UK, one in Switzerland. And then I've been thinking about it. And so I joined a number of Facebook groups, and it's literally a free-for-all out there. I am utterly horrified by what's going on. And these are serious drugs. They're very effective, used in the right way, but they have serious side effects. We're talking about, well, according to the UK medicines regulator, there's been 100 deaths associated with it. That's the deaths we know about.
Exactly, yeah.
Of course, that's the tip of the iceberg, because it takes a long time for these things to come to light. But there are, potentially many thousands of people who've had serious side effects.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing it in these groups. Now, does that mean I'm opposed to the use of all these drugs because I'm famous as the pharmacist that gave up drugs? No, actually. I think they have their use, but it's context. What appears to me to be happening is a free-for-all out there where people, I saw it in one group. They were, because they wanted to stockpile Mounjaro because of the price gouging that's going on, they were proudly, it was an anonymous post, but I assume it's true. I went to 5 different pharmacies, I ordered one from each, so I'm fine. What are my colleagues doing? What are my colleagues doing? If pharmacies are literally making so little checks that one person can, within a few days, get 5 of the same jab, it's beyond irresponsible. Stockpiling salt in a salt crisis or petrol in a petrol crisis is one thing, but stockpiling serious medication in circumstances such as these horrifies me. And I wrote a LinkedIn post about it recently. Where are the regulators? What is the pharmacy regulator, the General Pharmaceutical Council, is doing? What are the MHRA doing? Why is this being allowed to happen? Because in the end, damage will be done. The drugs will be brought into disrepute. My own profession, for which I'm a national spokesman, about which I care dearly, is potentially being brought into disrepute by a few idiots, and harm could be done. So just a note of caution, really. I think because of all the media hype, and this is one important thing I think people need to know. In the UK, the pharma industry is supposed to be self-regulating.
Right.
So they literally get to mark their own homework.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's called the ABPI, the Association of the British Pharmaceutical Industry, and they're supposed to police themselves. Well, think of any multi-billion-dollar industry, right? Would you have the cigarette industry police itself?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good points.
So Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, the principal manufacturer of Ozempic and Wegovy, not Mounjaro, but semaglutide, which is Ozempic and Wegovy. They were actually slung out of the ABPI for transgressing all their guidelines, right? So now you've got one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies on the ABPI naughty step.
Yeah.
How bothered do you think they are while they bank billions and billions of dollars? But I think what I want people to understand, like almost no one knows this. I want people to understand that these companies are not there for your benefit. They're not there for patient safety. Yes, they're regulated, but there's a whole debate about the effectiveness of the regulators, whether they're even set up to cope with this. And the fact that one of the 2 largest leading companies is literally being slung out for bad behavior. You've got to be pretty bloody bad to be slung out of that club when you're paying a huge amount of money to be in the club. I'm not saying don't use them. I'm saying, please use them with caution, use them sensibly, get good professional advice, and think about the entirety of your lifestyle.
But I think first of all, I'm in the forums. Nothing you have said there sadly shocks me at all, because I see that conversation every single day. That's where I first started thinking about how I could help. I was seeing women in particular, because we know that predominantly the weight loss side of things, that the uptake of prescription is being driven by women, and they are, as you know, going back to men's health conversations, they are more willing to share and have conversations about it. You know, was the why is my hair falling out? One of them, in fact, someone I know was saying to me, I thought I was going to have to go to ER because I hadn't had a poo in 2 weeks. Just things that trying to do normal everyday things on these drugs is actually becoming really difficult for some people. The mind fog, the lethargy, they're being totally blindsided. But to your point about the manufacturers, I don't think for 1 second a consumer thinks about the manufacturer.
They
They,
don't.
they don't. They are, I think a small percentage of them are looking for a partner that has got some good reviews on Trustpilot. You know, that's at the good end we're talking about, where kind of standards are important, and they will do the BMI check. They'll actually have a call with you to see that you're not a Photoshop picture and all of those things. And they will inform your GP. You know, that we know some are doing it well. And we also know, to your point, the fact that someone was able to go on and get prescriptions from 5 different places. They're doing them madly. I think that's the problem at the moment, that the consumer kind of underestimates the drug because they're so easy to acquire. There are so little questions asked. And I've actually started doing a bit of my own study. I've actually just started working through, when I Google, Monjari suppliers, I've just gone for the top 10 that show up in that Google search, because a lot of them have obviously in paid search. Started going through the process myself to see how easy it is. Ranking what it is I need to do, questions that are asked. The first 2 there was no face to face. I could just send a picture, or I could just tell them what my BMI was. And neither of them required me to disclose who my GP was. So that's a problem, Graham, because that's also how it's falling through the net. You know, you could do that with five companies. There's no reference or bank or data bank to say, well, actually, no, they are getting it from somewhere else, or their doctor flags. I mean, it would never be quick enough as well. We know the enough issues with the NHS, etc. But it's just so easy, which leads the consumer to believe, God, this is seriously the holy grail. You know, the celebrities are popping up with their unbelievable weight loss. They rarely come out and say at the beginning they're on it, but they do kind of later down the line. They usually try and make out some wellness routine. But everything, all the touch points are giving people this assumption that, wow, guys, this really is it. It's as simple as go online, spend what is equivalent of a meal out for a lot of people now, 120, 150 quid, which they will be saving on Deliveroo, Graham, because they will not be able to eat.
Yeah.
Their food aversion will be so unbelievable that their treats will now horrify them because they'll make them so ill. But it's just become so easy. And it's that narrative and the lack of checks and compliance and regulation in place from the suppliers that is reiterating this and driving more and more people to get the drug.
I think that's right. And we were just talking offline. You were saying Serena Williams is the latest to have come out.
Yep.
Right. I haven't looked in detail, but I looked at the picture of her and I thought she looks slimmer, but she doesn't look particularly healthy to me.
Well,
she was always she's obviously African woman, so naturally quite big and incredibly powerful, wonderful, wonderful tennis player. And I suspect a lovely human being from the interviews I've seen. Not that I've ever met her personally, but she was always pretty large. And there's this assumption, isn't there, that why are we getting fat? It's because we don't move enough. And all I would say to people, walk down your local high street, look at manual workers, look at the guys who empty the bins, who empty the roads, who look at the labourers, right? Are they slim? Hell no. So this whole, it's all about calories. We need to eat less and move more.
Yeah.
I mean, she was large anyway. And I mean, I don't know how good her nutritional advice had been over many years, but I suspect that she was probably kept slim just by the amount of sheer athleticism and power of the game. Whether she had really good nutritional advice through all of those many years of phenomenal tennis, I don't know. But of course, once you...
though, wouldn't you? You would expect, someone at the top end of their game that she was in so many years.
Yeah.
But, I think she's explained her use as changing body type with children and with perimenopause. And that she just wasn't, even despite the nutrition and potentially having all the chefs and coaches, and despite the amount of training, because let's be honest, the amount of training it takes to stay at the top of your game for those of
Incredible.
you,
Yeah.
unfathomable to you and I. But she was just saying that it just she couldn't either make the gains anymore in terms of muscle, or the look that she wanted, or get the losses. And then went down the GLP route, Zepbound, which is Mounjaro here. I mean, it should be pointed out that she is a brand ambassador for one of the big telehealth giants in America, Health. She also had to disclose her husband is on the board and an investor of Roe Health. But we know there's, there's
So there's
a
certainly a
lot of
conflict there.
there's a lot of money to be made, but it did raise a lot of eyebrows because, firstly, there's a lot of people that are just not admitting to being on them. They just don't. Like I say, the amount of celebrities that turn up 5 stone lighter and say they, all of a sudden it's my new greens. We all know it's not, and then they say, oh no, I'm on Ozempic or on something else. She's the first athlete. And, the discussion that I was reading is how wonderful, because it's now taken away a lot of the guilt that people were feeling. Well, I've put on some weight in perimenopause. If it's all right for Serena, it's all right for me. She's she's an athlete. So how hope have the rest of us got? So I think it's going to drive the uptake even more, because I think it's just going to kind of give permission for anyone thinking about it to go forward and do it now.
I'm glad you mentioned guilt. And I think this plays, I mean, your expertise is much more than mine here. So if I get this wrong, please. I think this whole guilt tripping is particularly, female psychology is much more vulnerable to that whole guilt tripping thing. And the way it's all sold, I think, is this. Historically, if you go back to the 50s, as the cigarette industry began to be found out for what it was doing to people, they were immensely wealthy. And what people don't know is that the cigarette industry bought the food industry, not in its entirety, but the cigarette industry were massive investors in the food industry.
Right.
That's been disclosed over the last years. And basically, it's the same playbook. If you go back after the Second World War, the cigarette industry gave cigarettes to the American GIs as they came off the front line, right? As a free gift. Very, very, very good charity, right? No, they knew that if they got the GIs addicted to cigarettes as young men in their 20s, they've got them for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Right? What happened recently? Go to COVID. And Krispy Kreme donuts gave 2,000 donuts, or 20, I can't remember if it was 2,000 or 20,000 donuts to NHS staff as they came off the wards for COVID. It's exactly the same playbook. And it's exactly the same idea of addiction. You get ultra-processed, highly addictive, ultra-processed food-like substances. I won't dignify them with calling them foods because they're not foods. They're food-like substances, highly addictable, highly addictive. You give them to people, and guess what? They get a dopamine spike, and you've got them hooked. So now you've got the cigarette industry and the food industry having broadly the same ethos, get people addicted to our ultra cheap substances. And then the pharma industry comes along and says, no, you don't have to address any of that. Take some Wegovy, Ozempic, Zepbound, call it what you problem solved. Right? No one is looking at the root cause of the problem, which is poor nutrition. And all of it's about treating the symptoms. No, look, I've struggled with my weight my entire life. Despite everything I know, I still struggle with my weight. Right? I get it. I don't feel guilty, though, because when you're in a food environment in which you're bombarded wall to wall, 24/7 in every direction with ultra processed food noises, the one I always talk about, there's two I talk about. I love Pringles. I absolutely.
Pringle.
Yeah.
Once you stop, you can't stop. I mean, they nailed that tagline, didn't they?
Yeah. And there's this one for kids. It's literally called Crave, Kellogg's Crave. Right?
Okay,
Telling you what its intent is. When you open the Pringles pack and it goes pop, right? And it's the same as, when you open these modern beers in cans, it goes whoosh, or a can of Coke, right? Before you've even drunk any of the Coke, drunk any of the beer, that noise triggers something in your brain. You're immediately feeling something, right? All of that. There are multiple PhDs working on just the fizz after you open the Coke, the fizz as you open that can of beer, pop as you open the Pringles before you've eaten any. So you hear the pop, and then this smell wafts at you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Driven at you. And once you start, you can't stop.
Yeah.
It's drug addiction. And then what they say to you, and this is where the guilt tripping comes in, it's your own fault. You should eat less and move more. You lack self-control.
Yep.
That's like saying to a drug addict, look, the odd snort of cocaine is fine. That's like saying to an alcoholic, look, come down the pub, we're all going for a drink, have one drink.
Yeah.
You would never, ever
Yeah.
do that. No one would do that. But that's exactly what we do with food addicts. I had Jen Unwin on, who's one of the world's international food addict experts, on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we're all off to a conference in a couple of weeks in September. Do please come. It's out there if you're interested in it. Food addiction is a huge problem. And it's not your fault. This is the point I'm trying to make. The food industry has created an addictive environment of ultra-processed food, bombarding you with messages. You eat the food, you become addicted to the food, and then you feel guilty.
Yeah.
You're not guilty. They are guilty of creating the environment that's addictive.
Yeah, I think the guilt thing is also quite complicated as well. I think there's a lot going on there. I think that, for people of a certain age, like Gen Xers, they were brought up on Jane Fonda and have seen every iteration of every diet over the past 30 years. Trends, constant. And they will have tried all of them. Back then, we would have had the cookbooks. Now we would just download something, or we'd have the app if we're doing carnivore or fasting, etc. The legacy brands, Weight Watchers, etc., were built on struggle, not success. So I think we've been incredibly conditioned. And I think that for people taking or choosing to take these drugs now, they have to battle with, this isn't how I was brought up. This isn't how I was taught. That we need to be doing more. There's always there has to be something I've got in my toolkit which I'm bringing to the table here. And I think that's why people are also so blindsided, because anything they thought they knew about weight loss is not on the table here, Graham, is it? Literally, this isn't dieting. It's drug-induced rapid weight loss. It's not, I'll take that little bit of information I know and I won't have carbs after 6, or I won't have that, or I'll still do 16/8 whilst I'm on them. You've got to forget everything you've previously learned. And for many people, that's years and years and years, or it's their mother saying to them, I'll just go off the wagon a bit for the weekend, but it doesn't matter because Monday, I'm getting back on it again on Monday. So it's all of this conditioning. And what they don't realize is, first of all, the lack of control they are going to have. And control, as you know, is huge.
Absolutely.
This relationship with food is everything. You're actually not going to be able to control this journey. You can think you can, but when you're on it, and particularly the way that the suppliers titrate you, they want, you start off here month 1, whether or not you could, want to. 28 days later, you're going up. 28 days later, you're going up. 28 days later, funnily enough, we're going to double that again. And this is the problem. People can be struggling at the lowest of doses. They could have gone from
all the time.
3,000 calories a day to within 4 days, like struggling to get 500 down them. And then mentally thinking, this is amazing because, wow, I don't have to eat anymore. And then the malnourishment and all the side effects of your body going, what the heck has gone on here? You were feeding me all of this last week and now I'm getting nothing. So and we're going to stop producing hair. We're going to stop doing this. We're not going to make you get out of bed because we don't want you to expand any energy because you can't afford to. Oh, and by the way, 60% of what you're going to be losing is going to be muscle. It's not going to be fat. You've got all of this going on. And again, that's lack of education, lack of understanding, misinformation about the drugs, the skinny reveals from the celebrities not telling you anything that goes on in this part. And this is why we're seeing so many side effects and so many people just lost, absolutely lost, and actually feeling pretty awful for a really, really long time and then not knowing how to get off the drug.
So again, I love the way you do this. So these drugs have a long half-life of about 5 days. And generally speaking, we say that a drug isn't out of your body for 4 half-lives. So that's 20 days.
Okay.
That's how long it takes to go. So you start with your 2.5 milligram dose. And at the end of 7 days, you take a second 2.5 milligram dose.
Yeah.
But your second 2.5 milligram dose isn't a 2.5 milligram dose. It's 2.5 milligrams today, plus the 3 milligrams that's still left from last week. So you've got a 2.8 milligram dose.
Right.
A week later, you're not taking a 2.5 milligram dose. You're taking a 2.5 milligram dose on top of maybe a 5 milligrams. So now you've taken 3 milligrams.
Yes.
Right? And then, as you were saying, so you get to 5 milligrams, you're not taking 5 milligrams. By then, you're probably taking 7.
Wow. And onwards.
Okay? And so it goes on. So if you follow what the makers want you to do, you start at 2.5 and you end on 15. But your 15 is probably 20 or more. That's the first point.
15 dose, it just terrifies me, Graham. I can't believe people...
Just to be clear, we do use these drugs. We never go beyond 5 milligrams.
Right.
A, because we don't need to, and B, because if I've gone beyond 5 milligrams, I feel that I've failed my... Okay. So you're escalating and escalating and escalating the drug. Now, here's another really important point that people understand. You know the old adage, if an apple a day keeps a doctor away, would you then eat 10 apples because it's 10 times as good?
No.
Like no one would. Ridiculous. But that's exactly what we're doing with these drugs. Remember, the original dose of these drugs wasn't 2.5 milligram. It was half or a third of that because it was used for diabetes. What the manufacturers discovered was that when they treated people for type 2 diabetes with those half or a third of the dose, they lost weight. So they thought, here's the big profit opportunity. We'll whack up the dose. So the dose had already doubled or tripled from the original dose, right? If you compare the dose of Ozempic and Wegovy are the same drugs, they're semaglutide. The only difference is the dose, right? The Ozempic dose for diabetes, I think, is 1 milligram, right? The Wegovy dose of the same drug for weight loss is 2.5.
Yeah.
Right? That's the starting point. Never mind the 15 milligrams, right? Now, this is another really important point that people don't understand with medication, but pharmacists do. As you double and double and double and double the dose of a drug, you would think that with each doubling of the dose, you double the effect. Actually, you don't. The reason behind it is quite technical, but essentially, if you double the dose of a drug, often you'll get a 10% increase in the benefits, but a 50% increase in the side effects, right? So you're going from 2.5 milligram up to 7.5, 10, 12, and 15. And the clinical trials show this. You don't have a linear relationship. It's going like that. As you increase the dose, you're only getting small benefits, but the side effects rocket.
So why are they
doing... No one's told that.
Is it because each dosage costs more money, which is what it does? The price goes up for each dose. Is that why that's happening?
I think that's right. I think there are two things. One is that the manufacturer benefits from the higher dose. I mean, when you look at all this controversy there's been about Mounjaro and the price increase, look where the big increase is. It ain't at the 2.5 milligram end, it's at the 15 milligram.
Yeah.
Right? The manufacturing cost to the manufacturer, the ex-factory cost at the 15 milligram is probably 5% more. But the cost of the drug, it's all about profit margins.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're selling the product, forget the fact that we're supposed to do this ethically. If your profit on a £400 sale is more than your profit on a £100 sale, right? So the manufacturer does well and potentially the supplier does well. The person who doesn't do well is the patient or the client. Yeah. Okay. So that's part number one. The second principle here is addiction. So the example I always give is you've got a naughty child and every so often you scream at the child in frustration, like occasionally. Child knows that it's gone too far and it stops misbehaving. Look at those parents who permanently scream at their children. The children just switch off, right? That in the end, it becomes white noise, right? You can't hear it. And I remember in my student days moving into a really noisy house on a main road. When we went to see it, we picked the wrong time of day. It wasn't until we actually moved in how noisy it was. 2 nights I had no sleep. By night 3, I didn't even hear the road noise outside. Now, that is a natural protective mechanism. All biology works in the same way, that if you force a receptor, with a signal over and over and again, the receptor stops reacting because that's how it protects itself from burnout, right? That's why you get addiction, right? So you have a small dose of, I don't know, cocaine and a slightly bigger dose and slightly bigger dose. Now you need the original dose just to stand still, right? You have to have a higher and higher and higher dose just to feel normal, never mind good. But of course, the escalating side effects are off the scale now, but you're addicted. So as you increase the dose, your receptors will literally tone down. So it's a phenomenon throughout all of biology, and it's well known. So there are two things going on, right? One is there's the financial model. Then the other one is your body will just stop listening to the signal from the drug. So you need more drug, but the side effects don't go away.
Yeah.
So it's really complicated.
Yeah. And people are just absolutely at a loss. I mean, I certainly haven't seen anything. I really do need to look at the other end of it more. I'm really struggling to see any pathways for people getting off the drugs, Graham, really struggling to see it. And this is also where the education and the coaching part of it is so important because, you know, let's talk about that food noise. So the food noise has become such a buzzword, you know, what's food noise? And people describe it as this constant conversation with yourself about what am I going to eat? And, you know, or if I eat that, then that probably means that I shouldn't have that later. So I'm going to cancel that out. And if I have a glass of wine, that's an extra thing. Probably have to go to the gym to babble, 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 babble all the time, all the time. And for a lot of people,
Guilty.
yeah. Yeah, and I've been guilty of that for a long time, and I think that's also where a lot of women go into the starvation mode, which is terrible for them as well. So with, you know, on one of the mechanics of these drugs is obviously they just switching that off, and that's also, as you know, why. Yeah, they're looking at it for addictions because hang on a second, why just it isn't even on my mind anymore, just gone. And that's amazing, you know, but if you do nothing about that or look at what was going on when you have got food noise and how you would cope with it. And well, you know, and looking at, well, was that linked to because I was stressed or, you know, if you understanding yourself in more detail, that noise is back with a vengeance. The minute that half-life that you come off that, and worse still, your basal metabolic rate will have dropped so far because your muscle loss, you know, you may have lost the ability to 500 calories, you know, or more for some people to even be able to sustain the weight you're on. So you've got the food noise back and you're actually thinking, oh my God, I like to get my takeaway again and love it. I can go to my friend's wedding or go to that you know, bottomless brunch and I'm back and it's going to be great. And I'm really excited about that again. But how quickly that spirals to, I can't switch it off. It's not going to go off again. And I've done nothing. I've done nothing to prep for that. And we're in the rebound phase where 80% of them will put the weight back on.
So one of the Facebook groups I'm on has got 130,000 members.
Okay.
And I just
I need to get in that one, Graham.
I'll send you the link. So I just put a thing like, have you got any plans for stopping? And like almost no one, no, I'm going to stay on it forever. Or, oh my God, I know I need to stop. I can't afford it. I don't want to carry on with it. I've got no idea what to do. I've got no strategy. No one ever mentioned it. Right. So there are two things for me about the use of these drugs. One is to use them in the appropriate way, but also like day one that you start, you should already be thinking, well, what's my strategy for stopping? Because here's what the clinical trials show. You kind of mentioned it earlier on. Number one, up to 40% of the weight is lost as lean mass. In other words, you're losing weight, but the weight that you're losing is muscle and bone, right? And there's this whole thing. The example I always give is look at Elon Musk's face. Love him or hate him, his face is like that now because he's catabolized that, because he's been public about using it. He's catabolized the muscles in his face.
Yeah.
And there's a big thing in Hollywood about Wegovy butt, because these people who have this extreme dieting.
I haven't heard that one. Tell me.
Yeah. So you start to catabolize your glutes. So your body will always preserve your brain. Yeah. Right? Now your brain has it's not like the rest of the body. Your brain's locked inside. It has no energy reserve, right? And although the brain's only 5% of our mass, it's 20% of our energy consumption. That's why you get the hair loss, right? Because if your metabolism has a choice between women's fertility, their periods, their hair, and their brain suffering malnutrition, what your body will do, it will redirect everything to your brain, because that's sacrosanct. Okay. So it's critically important that you understand that, right? And people haven't really grasped all of this. So that's why other bits of your body start to fall apart, because you're literally catabolizing parts of your body to sustain your brain, hence the wig over your butt.
Graham, no
And
one
instead of
understands.
having that rounded backside, it just goes flat.
But nobody understands body composition. That's why. Because again, and this is another thing I'm logging in when I'm going through the through all the providers, because I want to kind of do my own white study on it, white report on it, because I can't get my head around what's going on out there. And I know, and again, like I'm so not anti GLP-1s at all. My theory is, if you do whatever you want to do, and because you're going to do it anyway, and also if someone feels that it's important for their health and is prepared to pay for it, who is anybody to judge them for that? But I, as a naturopath and as a coach, just let's do it and let's help you thrive on it, not just survive, because it's literally people are just surviving at the moment. And one of the things that, again, it's down to the providers, is they only ask you about your BMI. Now, BMI, incredibly unhelpful, as I never used that with any of.
I don't use it either. Yeah.
I don't know who has, and it actually blows my mind that we're still even talking about this in 2025. And when you're asked to log your weight weekly or whenever you do with your provider, they just ask you, how much do you weigh? How much have you lost? That's it. There is even a conversation that, do you understand body composition? Do you understand about the difference between lean muscle mass and body fat? Because let's be honest, everybody wants to lose body fat.
Yeah.
It's not about, well, I want to weigh 8 stone. Well, no, if you actually were told you could weigh 9 stone, but you've lost all the body fat, they're just so confused by that. And we're reinforcing BMI, BMI, BMI. So there is nothing that any of the providers are doing to reinforce the point that you need to understand where you're starting and where you're going and track it. And you need to track every single element of it. But people just don't even understand this. So this is why we're seeing, an increase already on osteoporosis. And let's face women of my age as well. We're the least that we can't afford to be losing any.
You can't afford to lose muscle or bone.
No. Yeah. And also, particularly say women 55 plus, they're also the least likely to train. So they're the least likely to be able to ever get it back. And these are the problems. And this is what needs addressing, because these drugs are here to stay. This is it now.
And there's more to come. There are newer and stronger and even more effective drugs in the pipeline. I'm ambivalent about the oral drugs, because the problem is that they tend to get destroyed by the gut. I suspect the majority will always be injectables, but they're talking about so the difference between semaglutide, the Wegovy Ozempic, and tirzepatide, Mounjaro Zeptide, Zepbound, is it's a dual action, so it acts on 2 different incretins. They're now talking about, so that's I think they're calling it a trincretin or something, right? There's even more coming with, it's going to have actions on 3 incretins. So they're going to become more and more and more powerful, right? So we've talked about the fact that you lose too much of the weight potentially as muscle and bone. But there's another bit of the trial that no one's talking about. All the trials show that, there are no long-term trials. This is the first point. The drugs have been around for about 20 years for type 2 diabetes. We've got a fairly good idea what the long-term effect is on those much lower doses in much sicker people, right? So the risk-benefit profile with someone with type 2 at a much lower dose is completely different for someone who's basically just overweight. There are no long-term trials in overweight, because it's only been used a few years. So the longest trials I think are about 5 years. Okay. And what all the trials show is when you stop the drug, you put all the weight back on. Okay. But here's the problem. You've lost muscle and bone, and 2 years later, you've replaced it with fat.
Yeah.
So you're less healthy than if you'd never taken the drug in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's shocking. And I tend to hear more about new studies that show, there's extra heart benefits, cardiovascular benefits, or Alzheimer's benefits. there is a constant stream of PR that's released
Yeah, it's all PR.
to squash any of the negative
Yeah,
side.
just like they did with smoking, it's exactly the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Just vis-a-vis, since I mentioned smoking, you can go on to YouTube, and in 1992, I think it was, there was a Senate hearing, and they had the 5 chief executives of the 5 big tobacco companies at that hearing, and they all swore that in their best understanding of the evidence, that there was no link between smoking and lung cancer.
Well,
Not in 1940, not in 1950, but in 1990,
how
right?
did they get away
That's the
with that?
kind of propaganda we're up against. And they'd known the truth for 50 years.
Yeah.
All right. So look, it sounds like we're completely opposed to these drugs. They've got terrible side effects. No one should ever use them. It's all evil. It's all a huge manipulation. But actually, I don't think that's what we think.
No, it's not.
Kind of as we come towards the concluding part of the podcast, let's look at the upside, because there are plenty upsides. Let's now explore best case scenario, because actually we've both mentioned that are we opposed to all these drugs in all these circumstances? Actually, no. So let's give some positives, because I want to end with some really positive messages. And I'm seeing, and some of my colleagues who are brilliant clinicians who've been using these drugs long term, for some people, they are absolutely transformational, and some of the benefits are almost unimaginable.
Agreed. Yeah. 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 And I think also, I mean, I love that word transformation there. My company is called Metamorphosis because I really do believe they are and can be transformative and absolute game changers. And I think what I hope we'll see from here on in is that the wellness and the support around it on the non-clinical pharma side is built out. I think it happened too quickly. I think we really underestimated, particularly in the UK, how fast these were going to grow.
Yeah.
You know, when Morrison's and Asda start selling GLP-1s, which they started, you know, I think back in April, I was like, well, I mean, the horse has bolted now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
We're in. So we need to build around it. And let's think the weight loss industry, I talk about, you know, the legacy weight loss brands and yo-yo dieting for 70 years. So it's obliterated that in a number of years. So we just haven't caught up yet. It's effectively sent a tidal wave and hadn't put a lifeguard on duty. And again, that's where I feel I have a duty, and I know you feel you have a duty. Morphosis, I'm building a dual supplement line at the moment that is fundamentally understands what is going on during this journey and building products that help people mitigate some of the really unpleasant and quite damaging side effects. Because so much of this journey is from malnutrition. So there's
Yes,
so much
absolutely.
we can do there. But Graham, that doesn't come kind of towards the end of the journey. They should be planning that like you do when you're having a baby. Well, you know what? I'm going to get my body or my sperm or my fertility. I'm going to get my nutrition in check for 3-4 months before I start doing it.
Absolutely. That's so right.
So
Yeah.
it's this planning and support. And I'm talking also about signposted support because yes, someone could buy a whey protein or they could buy this, that, and the other. I think women in particular are very confused by all of that. And again, we've got this stigma of, oh, wow, I'm just going to get bulky and put weight on. No, not on these drugs. You're not. You just need to get nourishment in. So it's making products that actually say, hello, GLP-1 users. We're here. We've got your back. We understand what you're going through and we will walk with you through that journey. And that's also where my sister brand, No More Mondays, which is a bit of a rebellious anti-dieting. This journey is here and these drugs are here. How can we educate, help and build a community of people, not in Reddit forums or Facebook forums, Graham, but people with experts like you, me, and all of the wider coaches and clinicians who actually understand these drugs and accept that their people are on them. So let's help them. Let's explain at the beginning what body mass index is against body composition, why you should have a body composition scale, why you need to train, what is bone health, you know, all of these things. So they don't have to turn to strangers to ask for help or influencers with absolute, it's been bad enough that we've listened to influencers about who've got no fitness qualifications, nutrition qualifications, or hormonal health qualifications for years. But now This is way more dangerous to be talking about life on drugs that you don't know, you haven't experienced yourself. I think this is where we really need to build this ecosystem of support. And I think it can really fundamentally change people's experiences with these drugs. And we want to see them well, and we want to see them off them. And I think that's best case scenario, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I was so keen to have you on the pod, because you've got all those kind of communication skills and branding skills. You've lived in that world.
Yeah.
Probably the good, the very, very good, and the
Seen it
frankly
all?
terrible. You've probably seen it all.
Really.
So I kind of think that's almost the perfect point to stop, because I think our final message is one of hope and support and education and the right context for the use of these medications. And my argument is that they should never be the first choice. They're never the first choice with our clients. We do all the lifestyle things. And then if people are still struggling with the food noise, we overlay a tiny dose. And I say to people, just take one dose. Let me know in 2 weeks what happened. If in 2 weeks you're fine, let's wait 4 weeks before we have another dose. If the food noise came back on day 10, just slightly, I'm not trying to shut down all your hunger. All I'm trying to do is reduce the food noise so that you can make the lifestyle adjustments. Maybe you need it once every 10 days.
Yeah.
And as we change your lifestyle, you'll need less and less. As I say, we don't go beyond 5 milligrams because we don't need to. And if I've gone beyond 5 milligrams, I feel I'm saving people a fortune in the cost of the drugs.
Yeah.
I'm giving them a sustainable long-term lifestyle. And I feel that that's ethical and worthwhile. And it gives me, as a health professional, a lot of pleasure. Just spooning tablets or injections into people, honestly, I get nothing out of it.
Yeah. But I think also the fact that you and I both know, and, you being in the forums, we're not talking about 10 people here, Graham. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people just literally do not know what to do with themselves. And it's a degree we've never seen this. I can't think of any other area of health that we've ever seen this. And we've never
Nothing
seen
like this.
such
Yeah.
rapid movement of this as well. And I think 2026 is going to see the biggest year we've ever seen of this. And I think that the sooner we can accept, the situation for what it is, but work proactively and positively, and, hold people's hands and
Absolutely.
dispel some of the myths, challenge some of the media, they love all the horror stories. And don't get me wrong, of course, there are the horror stories, but they never also really tell you the positives as well. So, this is what I'm going to try and tackle, and just have a much more honest conversation and realistic conversation about what's going on out there, so that people can at least have all the facts for themselves, can't they?
Brilliant. So what are your plans going forward? I know you're still sort of developing your kind of offering, your business model, but in as much as you can say that to people, where are you going? How can people follow you? Because I'd love to work with you on this, because I just kind of feel, we come at this with very different complementary skills, but with the same ethos. Yeah. And I think this is so important.
Yeah. And as you and I both know, it's moving so quickly. I mean, I almost can't move fast enough for the market, which is, again, it is mind blowing. I am building the supplement line. We're in NPD, but again, I've been really particular there in making sure that whatever products I'm building, whether it's, because we also didn't even talk about the gut disruption that's going on with these drugs, which is huge and very, very common. They've got a lot of needs that require real strategitic nutrition. And even though the market is moving really quickly, I want to make sure that everything I'm doing is got the clinical background to it, science behind it. I've already got products in boots, so I understand compliance. I want to make sure that what we're putting out there is absolutely right for this journey. I come from the school of Hippocrates and the College of Natural Medicine, do no harm.
Absolutely.
And, that there may be other people that get their products out to market before me, Graham, and that's fine. You do you. I know, I stand by my way of doing things. I know that when we put out our line, which is going to be a dual line as well, which is going to look at the beauty fallout and those horrible side effects, that, you know, they're going to be the best in market, and they're going to talk to this woman in particular, where I'm building out at the moment for women, because they're driving so many of the prescriptions. And then
Please
bringing
don't
in,
forget the men.
yeah, you know me, massive men's fan, not going to forget the men. But I think they're really outweighing the women are really outweighing the men at the moment,
I
literally,
agree.
for this. And then bringing in, we're into Metamorphosis, No More Mondays, which is the community. I call it GLP-1 school. It's the
Mm,
education piece, which is where people like
yeah,
you and your colleagues will be so brilliant in really just telling people factually what it is, and what they need to know, and why they need to know it. And then bringing that into group coaching, because I feel that the community, you can see it, you're in the communities. This is what's also missing, that apart from somebody kind of guiding them and educating them and doing it collectively, they want to know they're not alone in this. And I think that's really what I want to bring into everything that I'm doing. I want to build a safe space community, but that is curated from facts and not myth, and really we can intervene where we need to and tell people what's not true, forget the scaremongering, all of those sorts of things, because I don't think anybody is doing that. And I think it needs to happen really quickly. So I'm out there going as quickly as I can. I'm on Instagram under Metamorphosis, Your Metamorphosis, on LinkedIn, on LinkedIn, so anyone can find me there, Bertie Stringer. And yeah, I think it's going to be watch this space, but it's going to be a really interesting few years, I think.
brilliant. I'm so pleased that you joined us on the pod today.
Thank you.
One to watch with interest, and as I say, very much hope to work with you in the future, because I just think, what you're saying is absolutely compelling, and it's so important. So thank you for your time today.
Very welcome.
If you enjoyed the podcast and want to find out more, join our Wellness and ProLongevity Facebook group. Don't forget to subscribe and follow so you never miss an episode, and maybe share to friends and family who might benefit. Finally, if you think you might need help with diabetes, heart disease, or any of the other diseases we discuss, then book a free consultation with Graham. There's absolutely no charge for this, and we would never put you under any pressure. What do you have to lose? Bye for now, and see you for the next episode.